traveling in a classic car is a huge adventure. Who knows if it's going to make it? They need constant care and attention, especially when you're off the beaten track or parked in a meter of water. How do you get back on the road again? We've asked Land Rover guru Rob to shine a light on the subject and help us understand the technical side of maintenance and repair.
Is this a problem, this curly stuff? We are here because of this. I'm scared. How do we find out where the leak is?
How do we find out where the leak is? Very good question, Victoria. Okay, so for a few months we've had an oil leak, which is characterised by the usual marks that a Land Rover leaves on the ground.
Leaving us territory?
Yep.
Ready? Oh boy.
From what we've seen in the workshop where we normally go, from underneath, we knew that it was coming from basically the rear of the engine, front of the gearbox. So today we're in a different location because we have the use of a four-post run.
It's a lot easier on the neck.
Which is a lot easier than crawling around on your back underneath the car. So, and basically now we can stand underneath the vehicle and check out which bits aren't leaking.
We're closer to the drips.
Yeah. Okay. So basically we can start from the main area, and the main area appears to be leaking from the sump. So there's a little bit of leakage at the back, but you've got to remember that you have an airflow coming from the front, and it will push
all the oil.
The oil backwards.
Is that where all of this comes from?
So we have a lot of oil coming down this side, and then around this area.
So because it's on the exhaust pipe, does it mean that's where we get that smell of burning oil as we're driving?
Yeah. Yeah, and you can see that there is that it's very, very black and covered all the way down here, and the chassis down this side is also wet.
Yeah.
So basically, it's coming from this side, blowing past, coming down here. There's a bit of oil over the gearbox. The oil, you just move your head. There is oil down here, but this is a different colour.
Okay.
And this is clear.
It's not as black,
Yeah, this is clear. And this oil is coming basically from the transfer box.
So there's a leak here as well.
So there is a leak here as well. And actually, if you look, you'll see that it's coming basically from that is the drain plug.
Oh, okay. So it just needs to tighten up.
Well, I was going to say, we need to see, I suspect that we put new copper washer on.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll check the tightness, but we'll put new copper washer on, we'll check the level. Okay. But the black part here is predominantly engine oil. So
why is it only on the left side? Does it mean we're taking too many left corners?
No, possibly. So no, I mean if the leakage is down from this side, it won't blow that way. It will just go with the line of the vehicle. So if the leak was more over this side, got to remember that basically on the Defender, if you look, and I don't know if Marcel's got a shot from this side, but basically the gearbox sits over to the left-hand side of the vehicle anyway. Okay, so if you stand from where I'm stood, okay, if you actually look, the engine and gearbox are not central to the vehicle. So the engine is actually canted over to the left-hand side because you've got the transfer box which comes out of the back.
So this is about the centre?
That's about the centre line, yeah. The centre line is actually on basically the edge of the sump. So it's about there, yeah. So you'll find most of the leakage sits over that side of the vehicle anyway. Yeah,
you can see this also over here as well.
Yeah. Okay. So there's no, I was going to say, the front end of the engine. So you've got the normal places where they leak, right? Is that you have the crankshaft, the crankshaft pulley, and behind the crankshaft pulley you've got the timing case. So if I can explain. Then this is the timing case, this part here at the front of the engine. And inside the timing case you've got the timing belt, that's driven by the crankshaft.
Okay.
That drives the injection pump up here, okay, so, and also drives the camshaft.
Okay.
Okay, and there's nothing in that. That's an empty air space with belt in it.
So there's
Okay,
no oil.
so there's no oil in there at all.
So it's not going to leak.
So that's not going to leak. So if it does leak oil, okay, there is. I'm going to say here there is an inspection hole just here under this bolt. Okay.
Yeah.
If it does leak oil, then basically you have a seal at the end of the crankshaft runs down the bottom of the engine. You have a seal there, and if it starts to leak oil in the timing case, then the oil will come out. That will contaminate the timing belt,
Okay.
which is not a good thing.
And then it starts slipping, won't it?
And well, actually, it'll start to break down the belt itself. Okay, it'll start to contaminate the rubber, and the oil will drip out the timing case. That's actually why that hole is there.
Okay.
Okay, so and when you go wading, you have a wading plug. Well, that's the wading plug that's gone in there. That's to stop the water going into the timing case. Okay.
So that shouldn't be there right
So
now.
that shouldn't be there because normally you're not wading.
Okay.
So, but okay, that's probably been left there from
Yeah,
its
after the last
challenge
time we
truck days
were
where you go wading. In fact,
Wading,
that was
wading,
just
wading.
a little bit too low for the last time, if I remember. Because it was past the tops of the doors. So,
Well,
but normally.
we call it a swimming plug.
So if you get oil out of there, then you know you've got the seal at the front of the crankshaft. Okay, but there's no oil there. There's very little oil here at the front of
You
the.
can see a little bit on the side.
Yeah,
So
it's a
not
little bit.
wet,
It's not.
but
No, it's sweating more than anything
okay.
else. Okay. Steering box and steering pump are both dry, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're not leaking.
Okay.
As we come further back down, then you can see all the way around the sump is leaking. But where exactly?
A carton pan is the
That's a
the
carton
Dutch
pan
term?
is the Dutch term,
Okay.
yes.
But it's
So-
a sump in English.
But it's a sump in English.
Okay.
Okay. But further up, actually, is quite dry. Okay.
So it looks like it's coming from the sump.
So basically, it's coming from the sump.
Okay.
Now,
And then these bits on the...
yeah, these are it's just hanging off this. So, okay. So this one here is the flywheel housing. So this part is the engine,
Yeah.
and then here you have the flywheel housing.
Okay.
So the flywheel is in here, and that's what the clutch is mounted to. Now, if the rear crankshaft oil seal, so you've got front oil seal for the crankshaft, you've got one at the rear. If the rear one goes, then you get oil coming out of this inspection hole.
Okay.
You can actually see the flywheel, and it's grey and dry.
So
Yeah.
it would actually be, what, speckled?
You
or-
would see, yeah, you would see little speckles of oil. You would see, basically, if you imagine that that's spinning at the revolutions of the engine,
Yeah.
so, you know, say 3,000
Yeah.
RPM,
Yeah.
and there's oil being poured onto it, then it kind of explodes,
Okay.
and you get a characteristic pattern going all the way over
Or
it.
one of those abstract paintings.
Well, there's abstract paintings, yes. So,
Doesn't look like an abstract
so
painting.
now, you know, we don't see any oil above.
Yeah.
We see it
Yeah,
on
it's
the
just
surface
on the
here. Now, if it was coming out of there and literally dripping out, then you would know that the rear crankshaft oil seal had gone.
Okay.
The problem with that is that you have to take all of this lot off behind to get to it. Okay. So you have going on. This part
Yeah.
is the bell housing.
Okay.
Okay.
And
And
that's got the
that's
clutch.
got the clutch in it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, and the bell housing, depending on the vehicle, the bell housing are either very long. If you look at a TD5, then the bell housing is probably about the same
Oh,
length
right.
as the engine.
Well, I've got a bigger clutch.
Okay. No, it's just depending on where the engine sits. The engine on here is sitting quite a long way back in the engine bay.
Okay.
You look at the TD5, I mean, you've got a space now
Yeah.
from the front of the engine to
Yeah.
the radiator with this big fan cowling.
Okay.
On TD5, it's right the way up against the front.
Oh, right.
Okay.
So you
But the
need that
gearbox
long,
is
yeah.
roughly in the same place, so you need to have the bell housing that kind of
Then what takes up the rest
that
of the
takes up
space?
space. Yeah, and there's just nothing in there. It's
Okay, it's
pure
just-
air. Yeah. So you have the clutch slave cylinder is on this side,
Okay.
and that basically through the
this thing
hydraulic.
here.
through the hydraulic pipes.
Okay,
That actuates.
That's a bendy one, or this one.
This
Okay,
you've got
that
a bendy one.
Yeah.
This metal one that
Yes,
comes from here,
okay.
joined onto a bendy one
Yes. Okay.
there. Okay. And that's just
so the metal one is going to the slave.
Let's go to the slave.
Okay,
And the slave pushes on the arm inside the bell housing, which then presses onto the release bearing, which then presses onto the pressure plate,
Okay.
okay, which then releases the clutch. Okay. And again, inside here there is nothing. So if you get oil leaking out of here, and at the moment we're not 100% sure, but if there is oil leaking out of here, then we know that the rear crankshaft oil seal went.
Okay.
Okay, because there should be nothing in there.
Okay.
If you,
I see.
yeah,
Yeah. So
if you,
in here there's no oil.
in here there's no oil though. You've got the clutch,
Yeah.
you've got the flywheel,
Yeah.
nothing else.
Okay. And
Okay.
the clutch itself is a contained unit. Does it have oil? in
No.
it? No. The clutch does not have
It's
any
complete
oil.
dry. Okay, basically it's just a series of springs.
Okay.
Okay, so metal plate and springs. If there is oil in here, say either if it's black like this,
Yeah.
and
Is that engine oil?
it tastes of engine oil.
Oh, gross!
Sorry,
You're not going to die.
no, you're not going to die. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it on a regular basis, but you're not going to
It
die.
doesn't taste too bad. I've tasted worse things. It's very oily.
That may go out in the final edit. Okay, right.
Okay.
The thing about it is that, and I do it, I was going to say I do it a lot, is that you have several areas on a Land Rover that leak, okay? And funny enough, mostly they all look the same,
Okay.
okay? How do you know what it is that's leaking, okay? And over the years of doing this sort of thing, that you can kind of distinguish. If it's black, then you tend to assume that it is engine oil. However, gearbox oil, axle oil, transfer box
You
oil.
don't taste axle oil, do you? It smells disgusting. Surely you don't need to.
Maybe we have to do this one again. I will put absolutely anything into my mouth.
Yes.
Shall we do that one again? So yeah, so over the years, basically, anything that leaks out of the Land Rover does leak out, and sometimes it's easier to identify what it is just by a very, very small taste. As I say, I'm not recommending you put battery acid on your tongue.
Okay.
And I personally do it, and so far it hasn't killed me. Maybe it will. I
Might
don't know.
explain a few things.
It might explain a few things, but it is a good indication of what it is that's leaking out. Now, as I say, out of here, you've got the possibility of it being engine oil. You've got the possibility of it being basically brake fluid, because the hydraulics on the clutch system are you use .4 brake fluid, and if the slave cylinder leaks, then it's not going to leak out this way. Okay, it's actually going to leak into the bell housing, and it will drop out through the bottom somewhere. Okay. So if the level on your clutch has gone down, but you can't see any leakage in the master cylinder, you won't see any leakage here, but you may see some drops here. And when you taste it, then, I mean, if you look at it, then it possibly will stay the same colour as it was, which is kind of that yellow colour. But if you look in your clutch master cylinder pot now, it's going to be dark, unless it's been changed recently. So it will look the same colour, but it will have a totally different taste.
So if we don't have your years of experience tasting oil, would you be able to taste a fresh?
Yeah, you can actually.
Compare
We've kind of gone off mechanics and we're now onto a cookery show. So, but basically you can line up with your guests. Several little samples of all the fluids that are in a Land Rover, and just taste each one. As I say, we're only talking about a little bit on the end of your finger, and you get to know over the years. You get to know what that tastes like. It's not very pleasant. I'm not saying, I'm not necessarily advocating everybody goes out and does it, you know, but it is an indication. It helps troubleshooting. Yeah. Okay. And the other place it can leak from is that you basically have the input shaft going into the gearbox, which sits midpoint in the centre here.
Okay.
So this is your gearbox. And there, on the shaft itself, there is another oil seal, and the oil can leak out of the gearbox again into that space. So there's 3 different fluids that could be in there. So as I say, you've got 3 different fluids that could potentially come out of the bell housing. Okay. So now we have the gearbox. Okay. Now on Muddy, this is an LT77. It's quite a short gearbox. Bear in mind you've got 4 gears in there.
What about the 5th gear?
We'll come to that in a minute. But you've got 4 gears in here, and the LT77 and the the R380 look very, very similar. Okay. There is the LT85, which is a completely different shape and is an alloy casting. And you also have the LT95, we're talking manual gearboxes, and that's much, much bigger. Okay, so, but basically you've got 4 gears in here, with the main shaft and a lay shaft, and the gears that run on them, and a selector fork, 3 selector forks actually. And then your 5th gear, going back to your original question, is this part here. Okay, so the 5th gear actually sits outside of the main gearbox, and is sort of like an overdrive. So in the early days you had four speeds, and then you had a bit that could tack onto the back end, which was the overdrive, and that's basically sat in there. Okay, so in behind here there is another drain plug and a filter, which a lot of people forget about when they're changing the oil.
So this is just an external filter plug?
Yeah, basically you undo that, there's a little filter behind it which you can clean or put a new one in. Okay. That's the main drain plug there, and that's the fill plug up here. Okay. Right. So drain the oil out of that one, fill it in this one.
How do you get the oil up there?
Carefully.
With the suction little pump.
well you have, I don't know if we have one today with us, but basically you've got a long syringe that you just fill with oil and then push it back in again.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah. So.
But it's quite awkward to get to.
Yes. And then here, this unit here is the transfer box. Okay. So basically the drive comes out of the gearbox. So the main shaft is up here, and then on there is a gear wheel. And I don't know if Marcel can see, but just here, there you can see a shaft here coming out of the gearbox. That's the intermediate shaft, and basically you've got a gear that drives off the main shaft, drives the intermediate shaft, which then drives the gears. There's 2 gears, high and low, on the transfer box. And at the front end of the transfer box, this unit here is the differential. And basically that allows a difference in rotational speed of the rear and the front prop shaft. Okay? And when you lose traction in terrain, off-road, on the front, and the front wheels are spinning and the back wheels are doing nothing, that's because all of the drive is now gone to the front end because there's a differential, and nothing happens here. And then you have that nice little lever which has got high and low, but when you move it to one side, there's the diff lock. That locks the differential. Okay. And 50% of the power goes backwards, 50% of the power goes forwards. Your rear prop shaft will turn, and it will drive the back wheels.
And then you can get out.
And then you can get out. Now that always assumes, because again you've got a differential front and rear on the axles, that always assumes that both the wheels have good traction. If one of the wheels loses traction, then that differential, because it doesn't have a locking mechanism, that will just spin as well.
Yeah. Then all the power would go there.
All the power would go there.
That's why when we were doing the trophies, you need a lock on the back.
Yeah.
As well.
Okay. So, and some of the modern day challenge trucks have front and rear locking differentials as well as the centre.
Okay.
Right. Okay. And the bit at the back end that looks like a drum brake is because it is a drum brake. It's basically a transmission brake and acts on the transmission, not on the rear wheels like a conventional handbrake. Okay.
This is what we adjusted to get the handbrake working.
Yeah.
So, okay, it's a handbrake, but it's not a handbrake.
Yeah, it is a handbrake because it's operated by hand, but a traditional handbrake would operate on the rear wheels via a cable. Okay. And this one operates on the transmission and locks the transmission. Okay.
Oh, this is scary.
And as I'm stood here and you're stood there, the cameraman is in the line of fire. That's cool.
Is that right?
There you go. Yeah, it's perfect.
Yay.
Except that it's draining over the edge.
Because I can't see where it's going.
It's alright, I've got it.